So just to start with, it would be useful to get a bit of an introduction from your perspective, what Relative Insight does and how you have been using HubSpot or have been hoping to use HubSpot for your business.
HubSpot was pretty instrumental to us because we went from having a CRM that I think was sort of one guy in his like mum's garage maybe, and loads of spreadsheets, which was just horrific. Lissy and I are like huge CRM fans. We were actually both historically massive Salesforce users. So neither of us had used HubSpot or were familiar with HubSpot. So we were a bit nervous about it. But I think HubSpot cost about a quarter of what Salesforce were quoting us.
Okay. Yeah. I do know Salesforce is quite expensive.
Oh my God. I think they quoted, honestly, I think they quoted us $250,000.
Wow.
And we're like,
is that for like a year or?
Yeah, per year.
Wow. Okay.
So when we went through the quotes with our COO, we were like,
it's a clear winner here.
We were like, oh, I don't know if it's that much better. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So we had to get HubSpot we're VC backed. So we've got big investors and measurement of the business, as well as we've heavily defined our ICP. We've grown massively across different markets. So we need visibility of teams in other areas, and we need to be able to collaborate cross-functionally and cross-geographically. So those are all the reasons for getting HubSpot.
What was kind of your process into figuring out, I guess having even considering HubSpot in the first place, apart from the cost? How did you come to learn about HubSpot and have that as one of your options?
Our CRO bought HubSpot a couple of years ago at a different company that he worked at.
Yeah.
He was adamant we were going to get HubSpot, and we were adamant we were going to get Salesforce.
What were the pain points you were hoping to resolve, the use of and the adoption of HubSpot for the whole company?
Massively siloed information in leadership. I had a spreadsheet, another of our VP of customer had a spreadsheet. Our spreadsheets did not speak to one another. Our boss, the CRO, had a spreadsheet that didn't speak to either of ours. And quite often the numbers would just differ ever so slightly. Also, our head of sales, her spreadsheet wouldn't often be the same as ours. And then we had finance running their own spreadsheet that didn't necessarily match the CRO's. And then every individual person in the team, because our CRM was so bad, they were all typically living in spreadsheets. And then secondly, we'd got into a real pattern in our revenue leaders of most team meetings or pipeline sessions being asking where things were, rather than having a visualization showing you where things were and you could coach on what you'd seen. So our culture was very much asking for information because it didn't live or was visible anywhere. Finally, Lissy and I think when we went through our last round of funding, built most things for our investors from cobbled together spreadsheets from 18 different corners of the business. The final bit is definitely, we've got a new CFO who's amazing and all over it. I think she speaks to Lissy more than she probably speaks to her own husband now. And our CEO is very into data, and so are our investors. So I'd say silo of information, revenue, time, and then backing every decision the business is making with hardcore data and being mindful with making sure it's not made up and it is real what we're doing.
So would you be able to talk to us about your process into deciding who to work with when you needed to implement HubSpot? How did you go on that journey to find BBD Boom, and what made you decide to work with us as well?
We didn't decide that. That was James Walkerdine, our COO.
Okay.
I think you were a HubSpot preferred partner. And yeah, so we were just introduced to you when we were already working together.
Well, in that case, would you be able to, from your perspective, explain how the implementation and the strategy process was like working with us?
Firstly, extremely frustrating for the first 3 months, which we did feedback, and we actually nearly stopped working with you. Every leader in our business, like every business, is extremely busy, and getting time in their calendars is always taking their time away from something else, and often taking their only lunch break that's left for the week and things like that. So time is a very precious commodity here. And above that, time in the office for leaders. When they're in the office, they want to be with their teams. Obviously, people are half remote now.
Yeah.
But we were often in the boardroom with Boom, and I think we went over some things like 17 times, and they just didn't exist in Boom. From our perspective, it was so frustrating.
So you were explaining things and it wasn't being recorded on our end, so then we would ask the same questions.
It might have been recorded somewhere, but no, they'd then ask us the same questions again and again, and again. And I think the time, which I fed back to
maybe Andy
team, well, Andy called me to basically. So it was that after 3 months of working together, and Lissy and I being quite frustrated that, and other leaders in the company feeding back to us, I've sat in the same session 3 times now. we're not making any progress with HubSpot. And obviously, every time we take a leader's time, that's on us to explain why we're using their time up.
Yeah.
And they then sit in a meeting that they've already done twice.
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
them.
So for these meetings, were they surrounding the system mapping phase of it, or was that after system mapping was completed?
I don't know what it was called, but it was basically when we were, it must be system
They were building the sprint, weren't they? Yeah.
building the sprints, working out exactly what we needed. And
Okay.
the implementation.
Right, the implementation plan, the use cases mapping, the flow chart, all of that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. And then after those 3 months, what was your experience?
Katie is an absolute asset to any company. That's like,
She's amazing. Yeah.
ATT, I think, like is absolutely insane. And like when our faith in BBD Boom was quite low and we were quite stressed, Katie was, in my eyes at the time, the only person who actually made it work and listened to what we were saying and understood what we were saying.
Yeah.
I think we were saying to James, we can't work with this company, because 3 months in, we joined a call with Adam and our CRO, and this is 3 months of work, and our CRO's time is so precious. And Adam just said to him, so do you have targets in the sales team? As if we hadn't talked about that once over 3 months. Our CRO was like, how do you not know that? Why has Ailey not told you that? And then we said, but David, who does our marketing, said, Katie's really good. Just speak to Katie and you'll be really happy. And yeah, she is an absolute power woman legend.
What is it about her working relationship or her processes that you really like?
She really, truly listens and tries to understand. What we found in other personalities that are really frustrating is they almost talk over you to give you their knowledge on the industry, which is not interesting or helpful to us. Whereas Katie never tried to lecture us on other things that existed. She just listened to what we wanted to do.
Okay.
And always figured it out. Like I don't know how her brain is that good. Like,
honestly, if we don't know it ourselves, she is like our star.
And sell it. The three of us have been millionaires.
Yeah.
So, I would also say like Mike was an absolute pleasure to work with. His like response time to emails was like,
yeah, Mike was great. I mean, he was like relatively new at BBD Boom when he came on with us. So like his, I guess, knowledge of things wasn't the same levels as Katie's, but like Mike was a great like account manager. Like he would always reply. He wouldn't always know the answer himself, but he would always reply and say, I will find this out for you and get back to us, which he always did. And he always like he worked late for us a few times, and he was very quick at replying and making sure that we knew that he was getting someone to help, which was good to know.
I think people don't realize the impact of, even if you don't know the answer, replying to say that you're on it. It was always within about 10 seconds, Mike would be on it.
Oh, that's a very, very quick.
It was very quick.
Yeah.
Mike actually moved on to the sales team, actually.
I know. He's not an account manager anymore. We have Adare, but we haven't really communicated with Adare too much. We don't really speak to her, just Casey now.
Tommy has put in some shifts for us, so we appreciate that a lot because we think he's gone way outside of his normal day-to-day job to help us.
Yeah, Tommy's pretty great as well.
Yeah, that doesn't.
The two of them.
So I would definitely say like our overall experience, if you'd asked me after that first 3 months how I would feel about Boom at this point, we literally wouldn't be where we are as an organization if we hadn't had your help at this point. No way. Absolutely no way. And Lissy will tell you, I'm not someone who often changes my mind. I've been so impressed. And I've got like HubSpot is at the core of everything that we do as a company. And I didn't think that was possible in such a short space of time. So it's been really amazing.
Would you be able to share some examples of that, like the outcomes you've been really surprised with?
Yeah, so I think we have so many quirky and unique ways that we work, which I'm sure if you speak to Katie or Mike, they will laugh along with that because we do everything in a different way to everyone else. Katie has managed to figure out how to represent it in HubSpot, things that we just thought were like way too wildly difficult. Also, HubSpot, compared with Salesforce, does have a lot of limitations in terms of reporting and how changeable that is and how like dynamic it is, how customizable it is. But we're almost entirely there in terms of what we were able to do. I would say some of the biggest ones are the reason, well, Lissy, you can talk through some examples, but how much I told the CEO that Lissy was going on holiday for 2 weeks in February, and he nearly had to sit down and have like a glass of warm water yesterday because he just can't live without HubSpot now. And obviously. And I would also say one of the main things is the more you speak to Lissy, the more you realize she's highly similar to Katie. And we can do almost everything ourselves, which is not true in Salesforce.
You do need like an administrator of some sort, I guess,
Yeah.
with Salesforce, from what I know.
Salesforce before, it was very, and I know Ailey had the same experience, like very heavily like based on code. So making changes and edits was difficult. Whereas, like, to be honest with you, at the moment, I make probably 5 edits a day to like what people are filling in, like what their pipeline looks like, all these different things. And if I didn't have the ability to just quickly go in and do that, I just don't know where we'd be.
Lissy, would you be able to share with us some specific examples if you can think of them right now? It's all right if you can't.
It's quite hard to answer that question because our whole entire commercial team has changed because of HubSpot,
Right.
which is amazing. Like everything everyone now does is in HubSpot. So their Monday morning meetings are in HubSpot. Their day-to-day stuff is in HubSpot. The automated email that gets sent when they close a deal now comes from HubSpot rather than then typing it out manually. Their one-to-ones happen in HubSpot. Our CRO and our CEO does reporting from HubSpot. Like everything now lives here, which obviously compared to 6 months ago is just like, it's completely different ends of the spectrum. I guess for me, in terms of like being able to do that all, I think the workflows feature in HubSpot is just like great. And Katie sort of teaching us and me how to use it was great, because she, when we first were like doing everything, like built some really complex workflows, which at the time I didn't really understand. Whereas now, like with her sort of training and being able to look at what she's done, we use workflows for pretty much everything, which is great.
I do like the workflows tool. Just does like amazing things that you can't even think of. And then when you think of his situation, you're like, oh, maybe we can figure it out with a workflow. It's quite fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of mine and Lissy's life when we're in the office now is we've both dreamt of HubSpot like quite a few times, and like how
Oh my
we
gosh.
this morning, like I dreamt of the answer. We could do it this way. And I think it's a really satisfying software. And we, again, because Katie's really good at explaining how she got from A to B in a really accessible way, like she never uses really technical language. She's a really good teacher for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
But it's allowed us to be able to feel like we could do most of it for ourselves. We'll probably never not need Katie, let's be honest.
Yeah, I definitely go to her with questions all the time as well. Even though I'm supposed to know a lot about HubSpot.
How many questions a day do you reckon she answers on average?
To everyone. Who knows? It might be the whole day.
I don't know how she does it, and she still acts so
She's so nice.
calm and collected.
In terms of moving forward from the project, obviously the main project has ended quite recently. How are you hoping to continue the use of HubSpot and being able to maintain those processes?
It's only gonna keep growing and scaling. We're always gonna have a project to be improving HubSpot.
Yeah.
I think working on the integrations more. So we've got Jiminy and we've got Churn Zero. We've been on a call this afternoon and realized our Churn Zero integration isn't quite where we thought it was. So I think smoothing out the integrations is going to be pretty big. We've requested to have some hours of support from Katie every week. We're hoping our COO will sign that off.
Okay.
Because there's still areas where we were looking at a workflow and we're like, why is this not working? And we just can't get to it.
Yeah. It's one of those things you can't really plan that's going to happen. It just pops up and then you're like, we got to fix this.
Yeah. And I think some of our next big projects in HubSpot are going to be things like we have like 20,000 companies in there, but we still have new business like SDRs prospecting, looking for new people on Sales Nav. So what we want to get to is a more intelligent way to search for people to prospect within the CRM.
Okay.
It's kind of a big project based on account scoring, and we might get some intent data in from ZoomInfo. So I think there'll be the more we can get people to live in there and not look at anything else, the more successful it'll be. So I think
better qualification process and how to identify which ones are more qualified.
Exactly. So I think surfacing leads is probably our next big project, because we're not using it for that at the moment.
Very, very side note. I don't know if you guys use ChatGPT, but I saw on LinkedIn today, actually Katie Townsend shared it to me. They've recently got new integration with HubSpot.
Do they?
Yeah. I don't know exactly
Really?
what it does yet, but I was really excited about
What
it.
do they summarize?
I don't know. I think it just helps you write copy for like sales and sales emails and all sorts of different things.
Oh, that's
So,
cool.
yeah.
Well, we're looking at integrating it into Relative Insight
Oh,
we
nice.
analyze text, so
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
right up our street. Yeah.
Yeah, side note, I thought it was really cool to share anyway.
Side note to text people. Yeah, it's our world.
It's great. Last question. What advice do you have for people who are thinking of adopting HubSpot and they're just starting to think about it and want to implement? Do you have any advice on how to navigate that process?
Work with Katie.
Okay, that's a really good point.
What would you say, Lissy?
I would say make sure that everyone who you're working with in the implementation process really understands what you're trying to do at each point. Because the way that our commercial team is set up is so, I guess, like complex and like intricate in the way we do things. And it isn't always just like a standard, like how a standard tech company might do things. So because of that, we had to think about the book solutions for like various different things along the way. And as Ailey said, Katie was absolutely insane, as we've spoken about, at like making sure she understood why we were trying to do something, which I think in the long run has made things so much easier, because she didn't just do it because we asked her to, or because like we said, oh, we think we should do that. She really like tried to make sure that she understood what she was doing, which in turn has now made that our process and our workflows do all work, rather than just like being like, oh yeah, this is how you do it, doing it quickly, and then it not actually fitting our needs. And we did have a few times with like reporting and stuff where Katie was so proactive and amazing, like built stuff out for us, and actually only we know how certain people in our business like to report on things. So then we said, you know what, we'll do this part of it, but she obviously gave us the foundations to get there.
Yeah, that's really helpful.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that, because I bet, Clorinda, the reason they were asking people things 3 times was because they needed more detail. And I think it was just that we were like, oh my God, we've already answered this. So I think that communication, like, no, that everyone's good at their jobs, right? Like constant communication. And I think Lissy went for lunch with Mike and Katie, and they had so much information, but we didn't know where it lived or where they'd been storing it or any of that stuff. I think if someone was going to implement HubSpot, what I found extremely helpful in this, and something that Boom were really good at working with us on, was constant deadlines to be working towards.
Yeah.
But this is such a big project. I don't think I've ever worked on a project this big in my career. It was literally mental. Like, there were times where we were like, we are never going to finish this. We'll be like 75 years old, like wanting to have retired, and HubSpot still won't be fucking integrated. It was just like such a big task. And we found, both for us, Lissy and I, we set some internal deadlines, like going cold turkey on other spreadsheets and other ways of reporting and things like that with our C-suite. But what Katie definitely taught me, and what Boom definitely taught me over this, is like, because you break it into sprints and you're constantly looking at deadlines and milestones, your progress is far less intimidating than looking at the thing as a whole. But I found that extremely helpful. Yeah, that would be my thing that I really liked.
Okay, thank you.